like rather, it's, if you take any individual area, there's a mass of fascinating empirical information coming out. But what it seems to have hit is a sort of impasse as regards the development of theory. Um, there's it's become hyper reductionist, so that information at the cognitive level in general is, or let's say, not information, but conceptual frameworks at the cognitive level have not advanced very much at all. The computational theories of which you're interested yourself um, have been potentially very productive, but if you take, for instance, neural networks as applied to um, cognitive operations, as the underpinning of cognitive operations, um, which, for instance, was very productive as far as understanding effects of brain damage concerned in the 1990s. This area is almost dying out now. People are not going into it. There's, in a sense, computationally oriented people tend to be the same who are interested in the technicalities of things like imaging, which is technically fascinating, but being able to get more reliable data out of a functional imaging experiment doesn't necessarily help you explain the organization of the mind better. The sort of ideas that have come out of things like the Helmholtz machine, originally created by Hinton and Diane here 20 years ago, which Fiston has developed a lot, for instance. These sorts of things are exceptions rather than the rule in the area. So that I think there's a fascinating mass of empirical information and an almost a lack of advance at the level of theory. Let's start at more straightforward examples. If one's going to have better rehabilitation of patients with brain injury, it's going to require either methods that are based on an adequate understanding of the processes damaged, or artifacts that are going to the patient will use or be implanted in the brain that will be able to facilitate those particular types of operations that are defective. Or if you take education, the way that whether one can actually speed up education, again, going to depend on a better understanding of how one's ability to, for instance, a particular domain like arithmetic or develops. At a more general level, it seems to me that one of the major problems facing humanity is the development of intelligent machines. And I belong to the group that think that intelligent machines will surpass all aspects of human cognition. But in so doing, there'll need to be a better understanding of how the human cognitive system, probably need to be a better understanding of how the human cognitive system works in order to be able to develop those machines. What will happen after those machines are developed is, of course, an incredible social problem that nobody is really able to confront at the moment. So cognitive neuroscience in that sense could be something with positive or a negative influence on the future. But it does have these more specific applications in things like rehabilitation or in education. Well, the first is that the mind is an incredibly complex thing. You see this very clearly from the effects of brain damage. That you get the most counterintuitive capacities that are damaged or preserved after brain damage. But the other more general thing, and so that to understand the mind, and to understand the mind obviously is necessary for education, medicine, all sorts of reasons, is a very complex matter. But the more we see the way that any type of cognitive activity depends on is being carried out by particular parts of the brain in particular ways, the more one realizes that taking the mind and the brain as one entity as a whole, that there is nothing that any explanation of what's happening there will come from within that combination. It's not going to come from anything outside. If you want, that materialism is the appropriate way to understand the mind.